Okay, so the world of blockchain tokenomics, it can often feel like, well, a bit of a dense forest, right?
Absolutely.
Especially when you look at some of the early implementations. They really grapple with everything from exposing sensitive data to the wild swings of economic uncertainty, price volatility, and those often isolated closed-loop economies. It's a lot to navigate.
It truly is. And you see many ambitious projects kind of struggle to integrate with real-world applications precisely because those foundational bits like solid data protection, compliance, predictable operational costs, they often aren't really designed into the core.
Right.
I mean, imagine running a business where your transaction fees could just double overnight.
Exactly. So today, we're doing a deep dive into midnight tokenomics and incentives. We're pulling insights straight from its new white paper just released June 2025.
Fresh off the press.
Yeah, and our mission here is to really unpack Midnight's, well, novel approach. It features this distinctive dual-component tokenomics system and, honestly, a really ambitious vision for a multi-chain future. Think of this as your essential guide to understanding what makes Midnight genuinely different.
And our sources, they really highlight how Midnight's aiming to tackle some of the most, persistent blockchain hurdles head on.
Like what specifically?
Well, first, there's privacy and compliance. They talk about moving beyond what they call radical transparency to actually protect sensitive data.
Okay.
Then there's the big one, economic predictability. Addressing that volatility with this unique token generates resource dynamic.
Interesting.
And finally, interoperability, trying to break free from those fragmented ecosystems to foster real cross-chain collaboration.
It's a pretty tall order. And they ground it apparently in four core pillars: operational predictability, rational privacy, cooperative tokenomics, and fair by design. Okay, that's a bold claim. How does Midnight actually plan to achieve all of that?
Well, it really all starts with their dual token core, Night and Dust. These two, they work together.
All right, so let's start with Night. Dust, what's its main job in this whole system?
Okay, so Night is Midnight's native utility token, but its primary function is actually pretty innovative. It generates DUST.
It generates it.
Yeah, unlike most tokens, you don't actually consume Night T for transactions. Instead, you hold it like an asset, and it produces the very resource you use to pay for those transactions.
Huh. So it's more like a productive asset then, like owning a machine that creates value rather than something you just spend.
Exactly.
So besides generating DUP, what else can you do with Night?
Well, beyond just generating dust, Night is also designed for things like block production rewards, ecosystem growth incentives, and importantly, on-chain governance for the Midnight network.
And what about its basic characteristics? How many are there? How does it behave?
Sure. There's a total supply of 24 billion Night T tokens. They were initially minted on Cardano and then mirrored on Midnight. They are transferable, so you can move them around freely. And critically, like we said, they're non-expendable for transactions. The design is also disinflationary.
Meaning?
Meaning the rate at which new tokens enter circulation through block rewards, it slows down over time.
Gotcha.
It's also truly multi-chain, existing natively on both Cardano and Midnight, keeping the same properties. But, and this is important, Night T itself is unshielded.
Unshielded, so public.
Yeah, its transactions are publicly visible. Metadata like wallet addresses, timestamps, values, all public for Night itself.
Okay, so Night itself is public, but then it generates something else.
Yeah.
Something very different. This is where the model gets, well, really compelling, doesn't it? The Night T generates Desta Dynamic. It sounds almost like a renewable resource system for network access.
That's a perfect way to put it. Holding Night effectively lets you have what are essentially free transactions on Midnight, as long as you hold enough Night to generate the dust you need anyway.
Like having a solar panel for your network activity.
Exactly. Or like having a perpetual energy source for your activity on the network. The mechanism is pretty straightforward. A Night holder designates a dust recipient address on Midnight, and the amount of Night you hold directly sets the rate DST generates into that specific address.
And this directly hits one of Midnight's core goals, right? Operational predictability. Because you're generating the resource you need, your transaction costs aren't tied directly to the potentially volatile price of the Night token. That's a huge difference.
Precisely. And that brings us to Dust itself. The Dust resource is designed with a very specific purpose. Its only function is to pay for transactions on Midnight. Just one job.
Okay, tell us more about Dusty's properties then. You mentioned rational privacy earlier.
Right.
How does Dust make that happen?
Right. Dust is shielded. This is absolutely fundamental to their idea of rational privacy.
Shielded meaning?
Private. Yes. Transactions using DUST happen without exposing user metadata. Think wallet addresses, transaction values, timestamps. None of that goes onto the public ledger. It's a huge contrast to traditional public blockchains where everything is, well, radically transparent.
Okay.
It's about providing privacy by design, especially where sensitive data is involved.
So your activity on chain isn't just immediately visible to anyone who looks. That's a major plus for a lot of use cases, I imagine.
Definitely. DUST is also renewable because it's continually generated by night, but it's consumable, it gets burned when used, it doesn't go back into circulation.
Right.
And what's really fascinating is that it's also designed to be decaying.
Decaying? How does that work?
Well, a DUST balance in an address, it linearly decays down to 0 if the night that was generating it gets transferred away, or if it's undesignated from that address.
Oh, why do that?
It's strategic. It stops DUST from becoming a speculative asset. It keeps the focus purely on its utility as a resource for transactions.
So you can't just hoard Dust or trade it on an exchange. That seems quite restrictive.
Yeah.
What's the thinking there, making it non-speculative and non-transferable?
You're right. It is restrictive, and it's a very deliberate design choice. Dust cannot be bought or sold directly at all.
Okay.
This completely insulates it from supply shocks and price volatility. It reinforces its utility as only a resource for transactions. And it also sidesteps some significant regulatory issues that pop up when shielded assets can also act as stores of value.
Ah, interesting angle.
Yeah, by making it non-transferable, Midnight basically ensures Dust is purely about network access, not a tradable financial thing.
The white paper uses this really neat analogy for the system. It calls Night a renewable energy power plant, like a wind turbine. Dust is the electrical energy it generates. And Dust addresses are like battery packs.
Right.
And the key is that Night turbine can charge any battery pack, doesn't matter who owns it. That paints a very clear picture.
It does, yeah. And it beautifully illustrates Midnight's whole cooperative tokenomics idea in action. It shows how different kinds of users can benefit.
Okay, like who?
Well, first, obviously, Nights holders. They can generate Dust for their own use. Simple enough.
Makes sense.
Second, you have Dust recipients. These are people or maybe dApps that receive Dust from others. So imagine a nonprofit dApp, right? It could get Dust donations from a Night holder to cover its running costs without needing to own any Night itself.
Okay, that's cool. And then there was this third type, Dust sponsees. That sounds like it could really simplify things for users.
Precisely. Dust sponsees are users whose transactions get covered by a Dust recipient, usually. That's the dApp operator.
So the user doesn't even need to know about Dust.
Exactly. This means people interacting with a dApp might not even realize there's a blockchain involved at all. The dApp operator can completely abstract away all the Web3 complexity. Yeah, providing this frictionless experience where the end user doesn't need to hold night keys. They don't need to understand DST. They don't need to manage private keys for every little thing.
That really does sound like a potential game changer for, wider adoption. Okay, let's switch gears a bit. How does Midnight handle transaction mechanics and congestion? How are fees actually calculated in DST?
Right. So Midnight transaction fees, they're paid in DST, and they have 3 parts. First, there's a minimum fee. It's a small fixed cost, mostly just for anti-DDoS.
Okay, basic protection.
Then there's a congestion rate. This is dynamic. It's a multiplier that gets adjusted every block based on network demand and how much computational resource is being used.
Yeah.
It reacts to trends by looking at the previous block's usage.
So it adapts.
Exactly. And finally, there's the transaction weight. Initially, this just reflects the storage space needed, like in kilobytes. But the plan is to expand it later to also include compute usage and disk reads.
So it's not just a flat fee. It changes based on how busy the network is and what the transaction actually needs. This brings us to their dynamic pricing model and this, fascinating target. Midnight aims for a block utilization rate of 50%. That seems really different. Most chains push for 100% capacity, don't they? Why have I 50%?
Yeah, it's quite counterintuitive at first glance, but there's a very strategic reason behind it. From a security and decentralization angle, smaller blocks are generally better.
Why is that?
Bigger blocks need more powerful hardware for the nodes running the network, and that can lead towards centralization over time.
Oh, okay.
Economically, setting a 50% target strategically manages block space scarcity. It deliberately leaves headroom for demand to fluctuate.
So it avoids hitting a wall immediately.
Pretty much. If a chain always runs at 100% capacity, any sudden spike in demand inevitably leads to crazy high fees and long delays. This 50% target acts like a crucial buffer. It ensures there's spare capacity to handle sudden increases without massive disruption. So when you connect this to the bigger picture, this 50% target, it isn't just some technical detail. It's a fundamental economic choice to keep the network secure, decentralized, and efficient, even when things get busy.
So it's like a built-in shock absorber for the network.
Yeah.
Keeps things stable. How does this self-regulating system actually work in practice?
It acts like an automatic stabilizer. If blocks start filling up beyond that 50% target, the fees automatically rise. That naturally discourages some users, moderating demand.
Okay.
Conversely, if blocks are consistently running below 50%, fees decrease, which should stimulate more activity. It's this elasticity that keeps the network balanced.
That sounds great for legitimate users, but hold on. Traditional chains use monetary costs to stop spam, right? How does Midnight, where DUST is just generated by holding an asset, how does it stop someone spamming the network? If I have loads in Nightkey, couldn't I just flood it with jump transactions?
That's a really critical question for any network, especially one with this kind of renewable resource model. And Midnight has, well, a pretty ingenious solution, actually. So yes, the increased DS cost during congestion, that provides some disincentive. But the much bigger deterrent is the intrinsic computational cost of generating zero-knowledge proofs ZKPs.
Ah, the ZK proofs.
Exactly. You need one for every single dust expenditure. And the white paper emphasizes this. Generating a ZK proof is much more costly than verifying it.
So the spammer hurts themselves.
Precisely. Even if a malicious actor has technically free dust because they hold a lot of night, every single transaction they send, even spam, forces them to do significant computational work. It's a self-inflicted cost.
That's clever.
It really is. This design lets Midnight offer essentially free transactions for legitimate use, while simultaneously creating this built-in significant computational barrier for anyone trying to spam the network. It ensures security without relying only on traditional monetary fees.
That's a neat way to introduce friction only where it's needed, stopping abuse without hitting legitimate users with direct costs. Okay, moving beyond the internal mechanics. Midnight has this bold vision, right? A multi-chain future. They want to be the connecting tissue for all sorts of networks. How do they actually plan to achieve that kind of interoperability and cooperation?
Well, a really crucial piece of that puzzle is something called the capacity marketplace.
Capacity marketplace.
Yeah, it's a system designed to give non-Midnight users seamless access to the Midnight network's capacity. Essentially, it creates a market for Midnight's DIEST resource. It allows DS to be acquired and used by people or systems that don't directly hold Night themselves.
Wow, okay. That sounds incredibly flexible. So who actually benefits from this marketplace?
Quite a few groups, actually. DApp operators, for instance. They could sponsor user transactions using any token or even fiat currencies. They could hide the whole blockchain experience from their users.
Making it seamless.
Exactly. Then you have Night holders. They could potentially unlock a new revenue stream by leasing out or selling the Dusty generated by their Nights that they aren't using themselves.
Interesting.
Non-Midnight end users would get access to Midnight dApps without ever needing to hold Night or even understand what DUST is.
Right.
And even the Midnight treasury itself could benefit. It could diversify its holdings by accepting other tokens and unlock new funding sources.
And I saw in our sources, they mentioned different ways this marketplace could work. Off-chain models and something called a Babel station.
Yeah, that's right. Off-chain models could include things like peer-to-peer dust generation leasing or maybe brokers managing leasing arrangements. Those could even handle fiat payments for dust access, which is pretty interesting for real-world links.
Okay.
But the Babel station concept, yeah, that's particularly innovative. Picture it like a dust filling station.
A filling station.
Yeah, sort of. Users submit their transactions, but they pay with non-Night tokens or maybe even fiat. The Battle Station operator then takes that payment and covers the actual DST cost on Midnight for the user.
So it's like an on-ramp.
Exactly. It offers this on-demand indirect access to Midnight's capacity. The user might never need to touch crypto directly at all.
So you might not even need to own any crypto to interact with a dApp built on Midnight. That feels like a huge step for mainstream adoption. What about on-chain versions of this marketplace? Are those planned?
Yeah, looking ahead, the protocol could potentially be upgraded to support ledger-native capacity leasing, think on-chain capacity exchanges.
More automated, more Web3 native.
Right. Those would offer more trustless interactions, and they could even have built-in fees that go to the Midnight Treasury, deepening the integration with the wider Web3 world.
Okay, so beyond this marketplace, how does Midnight actually plan to expand its reach across different chains?
They talk about leveraging cross-chain observability.
Cross-chain observability.
Yeah, it means an action on one blockchain, say, locking up some ETH on Ethereum, could trigger an agent to perform an action over on Midnight.
Oh, okay, so chain A affects chain B.
Exactly. This enables some really powerful cross-chain use cases, like you could potentially pay for Midnight capacity using tokens from a completely different network.
That is powerful.
And they also mention multi-chain signatures. These would allow the Midnight Managed Treasury to actually receive fees in various different tokens directly from other blockchains, building up reserves right there on their native networks.
That genuinely sounds like a strategy to break down those silos we see everywhere in crypto. Okay, let's shift focus a bit now. Let's talk block production, incentives, and governance. How will block production actually work, especially when Midnight first launches?
Right, so initially at launch, block production will be handled by a set of trusted permission nodes.
Permissioned. So not fully decentralized at first.
Correct. It's a measure to mitigate early risks and ensure stability as the network gets going. And importantly, these initial producers, they will not receive block rewards.
No rewards. Okay.
The whole system is designed to gradually open up over time and eventually become fully permissionless.
And this system seems tightly linked with Cardano, doesn't it? I read something about Cardano stake pool operators playing a big role.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really key design feature. In the future, prospective Midnight block producers, they call them MBPs, will actually be required to already be Cardano stake pool operators, or SPOs.
Okay, so you need to be running a Cardano pool first.
Yeah. And they'll be selected proportionally based on their delegated ADA stake. But here's the crucial bit. Their ADA stake stays on Cardano. It doesn't interfere with their duties as a Cardano SPO, and it doesn't affect their ADA rewards from Cardano either.
Huh. That's fascinating. So Midnight is leveraging Cardano's existing security and decentralization.
Exactly. It's building upon an already established, robust network instead of trying to create a whole new validator set from scratch. It's a smart way to bootstrap.
Definitely sounds smart. Okay, so how are block rewards structured then? And crucially, where do they actually come from if not from minting new tokens?
Right. This is another big difference from many chains. NIGHT block rewards come only from a finite on-chain reserve of uncirculated NIGHT tokens.
A finite reserve.
Yes. No new tokens are minted for rewards, and no NIGHT-denominated transaction fees are paid out as rewards either. This reserve is managed entirely by the protocol itself, and rewards are distributed as a constant percentage of the remaining tokens in the reserve.
Constant percentage.
Yeah. So this creates what they call a smooth, decelerating distribution curve. It means the reserve can actually last for potentially hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years. Wow. So what does that actually mean for long-term predictability? For block producers, for the network's economy?
Well, it implies a remarkably predictable and sustainable reward system. Block producers can estimate their expected rewards with a pretty high degree of confidence, and the community can project the reserve's lifespan way out into the future. It aims for long-term economic stability without relying on constant, potentially inflationary token issuance.
That is a significant departure from models that just keep minting new tokens forever. But hang on, this brings up an interesting challenge. Since DFT isn't transferable, and it isn't directly paid to block producers.
Yeah.
How do you actually incentivize them to include transactions? Why wouldn't they just produce empty blocks to claim their rewards from the reserve?
That's a really sharp point, and it's a critical design consideration they had to address.
So what's the solution?
Midnight's solution combines a fixed subsidy with a variable component. So there's the base reward, that's the total NIGHT distributed per block from the reserve.
Okay.
A large chunk of this, initially 95%, is a fixed subsidy. The block producer gets this part no matter how full the block is. It guarantees a baseline incentive just for producing a block.
Right, covers their costs.
Exactly. The remaining part, initially 5%, is the variable component. And this portion is split between the block producer and the on-chain treasury based directly on block utilization.
So the fuller the block the producer makes, the more of that variable reward they actually get to keep.
Precisely. That directly incentivizes them to actively seek out and include transactions.
And what happens to the bit they don't get if the block isn't full?
The unused portion of that variable reward goes into the on-chain treasury. And the white paper does mention that this subsidy rate, the 955 split, is expected to gradually adjust over time, maybe towards 50-50 in the future.
To strengthen the incentive even more.
Yeah, to further encourage producers to fill blocks as the network matures and hopefully demand grows.
This all sounds incredibly well thought out, really aiming for that long-term stability and fairness. What about the broader governance picture? How will Midnight evolve? How will it be controlled over time?
It's designed as a phased approach towards decentralization. Initially, they'll have a federated governance structure. Think of it as being led by a select committee, probably using multi-signature mechanisms for proposals and upgrades.
Okay, controlled start.
But the future plan, the long-term vision, is for progressive decentralization. Eventually, all system components, even critical things like monetary policy, could potentially become subject to change through community on-chain governance, provided, of course, a predefined voting threshold is met.
And there's also an on-chain treasury mentioned. What's its specific role?
Right. The on-chain treasury is basically a pool of Knights-T tokens. It's specifically set aside for ecosystem growth activities, funding projects, initiatives, that sort of thing.
Okay.
It's initially locked, and the long-term vision is that the community will manage it via decentralized governance, but that particular feature won't be active right at mainnet launch.
Got it. Okay, finally, let's talk about the Knight-T token distribution itself. Midnight really emphasizes that it's fair by design. What are the core principles behind how they're distributing these tokens?
Yeah, they put a lot of emphasis on this. The distribution is rigorously designed to be, well, inclusive and participative. It's free, crucially. No cost to participants.
Free.
Free to claim, yes. Accessible, transparent, the code is audited and open sourced, and broad specifically trying to prevent any single group from having overwhelming influence.
Okay, and it involves this three-phase claim process plus a redemption period. Can you walk us through the first phase, Glacier Drop?
Sure. Glacier Drop lasts for 60 days. Eligibility is based on something quite unique, a random historical snapshot of token balances.
Random snapshot.
When? They haven't said exactly when, but it's a past date. And it covers token balances across a really wide range of major Web3 ecosystems. Cardano, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRPL, BNB Chain, Avalanche, and even the Brave browser's ecosystem.
Wow, that's broad. Why the random snapshot?
It's absolutely crucial. It mitigates insider information and stops people from trying to game the system by accumulating tokens just before a known snapshot date.
Smart. So it's not about being an early Midnight investor. It's about just being an active participant in Web3 generally.
Yeah.
How's the allocation split between these different networks?
Good question. 50% of the total supply being distributed this way goes to Cardano participants. 20% goes to Bitcoin holders, and the rest is divided among the other eligible networks, proportional to the USD value of their token holdings at the snapshot time.
And how are individual amounts decided?
Individual allocations within those networks are then weighted based on the balance of each address. To claim, participants have to prove they control the address by signing a message with their private keys. And they need to provide an unused Cardano address to receive the INEHT tokens.
Unused. Why?
It's a best practice for data protection, prevents linking their claim activity directly back to potentially known addresses, and importantly, these claim tokens, they don't become available immediately. They're initially frozen in a Cardano smart contract.
Frozen?
Yeah, and they gradually thaw or unlock during the later redemption period.
Okay, so it's a staggered release.
Yeah.
Prevents a massive dump right at the start. What happens to any tokens that aren't claimed during Glacier Drop?
That leads directly into claim phase 2, scavenger mine. This runs for 30 days right after Glacier Drop finishes.
Okay.
This phase is specifically for those unclaimed Glacier Drop tokens. And it's open to anyone, even people who weren't eligible for Glacier Drop at all.
Anyone. So how do you participate in scavenger mine? What does that involve?
It involves completing some kind of computational task or puzzle. The white paper stresses that this task is designed to be accessible to the general public. It shouldn't favor big mining companies with specialized hardware.
Fair access again.
Exactly. A minimum of 1% of the total Knight-T supply is earmarked for scavenger mine participants. An equal amount, another 1%, is set aside for the later lost and found phase. And the rest of the unclaimed tokens from Glacier Drop go towards seeding core Midnight Network groups like the Midnight Foundation, the Reserve we talked about, the Midnight TGE pool, and the on-chain treasury.
Okay. And when does the actual mainnet launch? the Genesis block?
The Genesis block and the mainnet launch happen right at the end of that scavenger mine phase. And at that point, Midnight's code base also becomes fully open source.
Right. Then we get into the redemption period and this thawing of the tokens. How does that schedule actually work?
Okay, so this whole period lasts 450 days in total. The tokens claimed during both Glacier Drop and Scavenger Mine, they unlock gradually. It happens in 4 equal 25% installments spread over 360 days.
4 installments.
Yeah. And the date of the first 25% unlock is randomly determined. It'll fall somewhere between 1 and 90 days after the Genesis block. Then the next installments unlock every 90 days after that.
Why the randomness and the staggering?
It's explicitly designed, as the white paper puts it, to mitigate the chances of supply shocks or sudden spikes in token flows that may distort supply and demand market dynamics. Basically, it prevents manipulation and allows the market to absorb the new supply gradually.
Makes sense. And how do people actually redeem these tokens once they've thawed?
They use the Night claim portal. There is a small Cardano network fee involved, paid in ADE. The paper mentioned examples like 0.16 to 0.17 ADA, which was about 9 cents US back in April 2025. So pretty minimal.
Okay.
It's important to note, though, after 450 days, that includes a final 90-day grace period. The Night claim portal itself is scheduled to sunset to stop operating.
So what happens then?
Users would then need to interact directly with the smart contracts on Cardano to redeem any remaining thawed tokens. It becomes a bit more technical.
Got it. And finally, there's claim phase 3, lost and found. So this is like a final chance for people who genuinely missed out earlier.
Exactly that. It lasts for a long time, 4 years. It's specifically for original Glacier Drop participants who, for whatever reason, missed their initial 60-day claim window.
Okay. Do they get their full original amount?
No, they receive a fraction of their original allocation. The exact fraction isn't specified, but a minimum of 1% of the total supply is earmarked specifically for this phase.
And how do they claim?
They need to provide proof of ownership to a specific smart contract on the Midnight network itself. And interestingly, that contract actually covers the DST transaction cost needed to transfer the Night tokens to them immediately.
That's handy. What about tokens unclaimed even after 4 years?
Any Night tokens left in the lost and found pool after the 4 years are up, they go directly to the on-chain treasury.
Okay, so looking back at everything we've discussed, Midnight's tokenomics, it really offers this unique blend of features, doesn't it? You've got the renewable DS resource enabling predictable costs and privacy. You have this genuinely cooperative multi-chain vision, and then this very deliberate, fair by design token distribution.
Indeed. It really represents a very considered attempt to redefine how blockchain networks operate, aiming to make them far more suitable for real-world applications by tackling those fundamental pain points head-on.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? Well, this comprehensive approach, it could significantly foster broader adoption of decentralized applications. It could drastically simplify the user experience by hiding a lot of the blockchain complexity, and it could potentially drive true cross-chain value creation. It's really about trying to make Web3 more accessible, more predictable, and genuinely interconnected.
Absolutely. And Midnight's design, it fundamentally challenges a lot of traditional blockchain assumptions, from how transaction fees work to how value is distributed right from the start. So maybe a final thought to leave you with is, what does this modular cooperative vision really mean for the future of all those isolated blockchain ecosystems we see today? And how might it reshape what we even consider a network in the world of Web3?